Hey guys, it's been a long time since a video, so I thought I would do a video on installing FreeBSD. It's one of my favorite operating systems, and I think you'll all enjoy watching it be installed and maybe learn a little something too. It might be a breath of fresh air if you're used to your typical Linux installation and dealing with Linux. It's certainly quite a different system, has a different feel to it, mainly because it's all developed by a single team. So the kernel and the user land is all developed by a single team. So what that does is it gives it a feel like it's all very much together. Unlike Linux, where a team sort of has to time all the packages to make sure that they use all the same dependencies so they don't conflict. Uh, you don't really have that problem with this OS because the team controls everything. So that everything is really tightly working together. There's two real quick. There's two file systems you can choose from: UFS, the Unix file system, or ZFS. ZFS is from Solaris. It's a really scalable file system slash logical volume manager slash physical volume manager all rolled into one. So it's not just a file system. It handles the file system, but you don't have to use that piece of it. You can create zvols, which are basically volumes that you can give raw to other applications and operating systems. It's a physical volume manager in that it does all your RAID levels. It's also a logical volume manager in that you can spread your logical volumes across multiple physical disks. There really isn't an analog like it in the Linux world or anywhere else. ButterFS is laughable compared to it, but it is a rock solid file system that gives you snapshots, replication, deduplication, compression, encryption all in one. Um, that's a whole video into itself. So I thought I would just do a basic UFS file system. You can see we have a boot partition, swap, and a root partition. I'm going to leave that as is, and we're just going to install this here. And it's a very tiny install. It's about 800 megs for just the base system, which gives you all the command line Unix goodness you would want, including the BSD version of I, all the libraries, and the kernel. It does not include any of the third-party libraries or applications. The applications are stored in a separate part of the system, and that's nice because your applications have their own etc directory separate from the system etc directory, and you can upgrade your applications while not upgrading your OS, and you can upgrade your OS while not upgrading your applications. So it's a much cleaner system to administer and to deal with, and I really find it hard to go back to Linux. It also has this thing called jails, which is like cheroots on steroids, that basically are what Docker and every other LX container thing should be. But Linux just hasn't seemed to work that out. After using jails on BSD, you'll have a hard time going back to any of those other systems as well. I'm going to set a root password here real quick, and then I'm going to set the time zone, and then I'm going to just leave SSH starting. We don't need anything else. I'm going to add a local user so that we have something to log into besides root. This is going to be an admin user, so I want to add it to the group wheel. In BSD, wheel is a special group that gives you permission to su to root and to use root. So it's whoops about that. Let's try that again. I don't typo it. And that all looks correct. And I want a few more users. And with that, I think we're done with the install. I don't want to make any changes. So let's reboot the system. So the system's going to reboot and come up now. Notice I named the system localhost. That's just because I don't really have a DNS name to put in right now, and if your system can't resolve itself in DNS, it causes issues. So I'll show you how to set the host name and how to get around that. The nice thing about FreeBSD is that all of the settings are pretty much in one file, rc.conf, for your network. has a list of all your services that are starting, so it's real easy to deal with. You see, it generated our basic keys there. So let's log in as root. I can not typo. So here you go. There's the default MOTD. You'll see that that's the basic layout of the file system. And you'll see that the host name is what I set it to. And there's no domain name right now. So if you want to change the host name to make it permanent, you really want to put it in rc.conf here. This is where you have all your system files. So we're going to change this to VM as our host name. And actually, I'll just call it VM host because I'm going to use it to show you Beehive a little later in a different video, which is a FreeBSD hypervisor. But let's do that. And then what we want to do is we want to edit the host file. And what we want to do is, since I don't have a DNS server set up, we want to make sure that we tack on that VM host here, so that when I set the host name and rename it, that we can ping ourselves. Otherwise, that'll cause us some issues. Now, the system's clean, and you see that it's FreeBSD 10.1 release, which is the most current release, revision number 0. What we want to do is we want to patch it because there's a revision number 274401. There's definitely some patches out for the system since it was released on the CD. So the very first thing that you always want to do is patch it. And the easiest way to do that is FreeBSD-update fetch install. So that's going to check the mirrors for the latest patches. It's going to inspect your system and find out what you have installed, and then install it. And it's real simple. It takes about 5 minutes, and you'll see that it'll come up. It'll come up and patch itself. There's something else. Now, the FreeBSD OS supports a number of full disk encryption schemes. It supports full disk encryption on UFS and on GELI, and on UFS. So you had UFS and ZFS both support full disk encryption, and they use something called GELI, which is a framework in FreeBSD to do really robust full disk encryption. However, they also support encrypting just your home directories, which is kind of interesting in that some of the recent studies have found that if you encrypt the entire drive and someone can figure out what OS you have and what version of the OS, certain directories on the drive will be the same. So by knowing what the file was before encryption and the file is after encryption, they have two of the key pieces there. So it makes it easy to find your key, or easier, especially if you have the amount of, these are some of the files that are going to be updated. You can hit Q to skip that, and it's going to install the updates. It makes it easy for them to guess what your key might be. And okay, so we're done. So let's just reboot this real quick. Before we reboot it, I want to do a rename -a, and you'll see that it still says 10.1 release. Let's reboot that. So anyways, it's been theorized that if you have a full disk encryption, you're running Windows, and they know the exact patch level of Windows by comparing the before and after Windows folders, it helps them to narrow down the range of mathematical keys that you could have been using in that encryption. And it's theorized that someone like the NSA, or that has a lot of computing power, that could reduce the amount of time it takes to crack your encryption by quite a bit.